Hey, aloha kako! So today, we're finally gonna reveal the identity of the man in the hallway. For those of you who are just tuning in, try go back a couple Mokuna and go catch up. Or if you want to go all the way back, you can go back to the first season where we first introduced the man in the hallway storyline, and for some reason it's only until season 3 that we're finally gonna wrap it up. But okay, so I was taking the Hawaiian genealogies class over at UH Manoa, and for that class you're kind of like required to write like a 30-page paper report on your own mo'okuauhau or your genealogy. And prior to doing any research, like we were taught to like pule before even beginning to dive into these kind of ancestral things, because you always want to make sure that you're on the right track and you got permission from the ancestors to reopen their stories and to bring them out. And then after that, you're also given like a bunch of resources. Like you're taught about how to utilize the Hawaii State Archives for genealogy research. You're taken to the Bureau of Conveyances over in downtown Honolulu to look at like the land documents of your kupuna. You're also taken to the Bishop Museum to check out what kind of genealogy stuffs they got there too. And luckily for me, the Bishop Museum is where I kind of struck gold, because when I was looking up the name Kilikoa there, turns out they had like a whole list of documents and photos having to do with that ohana, my ohana. And I recognized one of the names on the list that they had was DM Kilikoa, which also happened to be not only a name on top of my own family's like genealogy chart, but that also happened to be the same kupuna, or the boogeyman kupuna, that like my generation and my mom's generation were taught to fear. So when I saw that they had some of his stuff there, I was stoked, because I was like, wait, you guys have a picture of my kupuna? Like I had never seen him before, so I was just like super hoi hoi, and I was like, okay, can you guys like bust it out? and luckily the staff there was super cool. They're like, oh, this is your ohana? Okay, we'll get it. So they went in the back, and it wasn't too long before they came out with a couple photos having to do with that kupuna and his ohana. And so the first photo they put down in front of me was this picture of this tall Hawaiian man wearing a suit. And I remember looking at the photo and I was like, why does this dude look so familiar? And then when I finally looked into his eyes, and then I looked down at his clothes, I was like, oh my god, this huge photograph of this guy that I'm looking at, he was the man in the hallway. And so then I got to see a couple more photos of him, and they put out like these newspaper articles about him, and then turns out he had a bunch of chants that he had written that were documented, and some of his chants are put into a book. If you guys have been following me for a long time, I actually did post a video about him a while ago, so you guys probably have already put it together who the man in the hallway was. But yeah, it was my Tūtū Man, my great grandfather, David Mokana Kaikua Ana Kili'ikoa from Ka'u, Hawaii. And yeah, it turns out that he was a hula person, he was a chanter. There was articles about him having like all these like special kind ipu that he used to make, and there were even photos with him and his ohana with like just a bunch of ipus around them. Supposedly he was super introverted, but he loved music and dancing. There was also a couple articles where he like thrown the biggest luau in all of Ka'u, and he was friends with all of these kumuhula of that time. He was also a dream interpreter for the ohana, which was a talent that he later passed down to his son Benjamin, who my nephew is named after. And did he practice any spooky kind stuffs like my ohana was insisting? Maybe. I mean, I did find a couple chants that were kind of suggesting that he was into that kind of stuff too, but I don't know, it's not scary to me. I mean, that was a different time where like you kind of had to know how to protect yourself from other people who are willing to send curses your way. So I wouldn't be surprised if every family of that time had somebody in their ohana who had to have that kind of practice going on, because it was necessary. Is it necessary now? I'm gonna make a bold statement and say yes. Because you know how like in the earlier Mokuna where I talked about the story with Sea Rose, we didn't just wake up the language and hula. Almost everything else is waking up too. Some things that a lot of our lahu is probably not ready to talk about, but they're waking up. And yeah, I just think it's better to be makaukau for when certain things reemerge rather than be surprised when they pop up. Like for instance, the whole man in the hallway thing, like that is a great example of something that was sleeping, but over time it was manifesting itself back into this reality because it was time to be woken up already, and there was nothing that my ohana could have done to stop it. There are some kupuna who are just gonna push through because it's time for something to come back that was put to sleep. yeah, whether people are ready for it or not, because in my ohana, I would say, although they've kind of gotten on board, there are still many where it's very awkward. It's a very awkward thing to talk about. They just don't want to hear about it. Like, they think Hawaiian stuff is cool, but as long as you keep the spooky stuffs out of it, then they'll be okay with it. But yeah. And as for me, I don't know, just going through that journey and then figuring out who he was and then finding out what he was like, I was like, this explains so much about why I'm kind of into the things that I'm into. I mean, sometimes I wonder if he would have been cool with Janet and Scream and all the things that I'm into. I mean, there has to be some kind of like explanation behind that. I don't know. Maybe it'll click one day. I'll be like, oh, he was into like hula and music and performing and entertaining people. And Janet and Michael Jackson also are into music and performing and entertaining people. So maybe that's why I'm pulled to them. I don't know. That's just my brain trying to connect the ancestral dots. But okay, so in honor of this kupuna of mine, I'm gonna finish this Mokuna off with a Mele that he wrote. And I actually featured this Mele in the first video I ever did where I talked about him. But the difference between then and now is then I wasn't able to sing it like on camera because I don't know, I was too like giggly and nervous about it. And I still kind of am because I just have so much aloha for this kupuna of mine, and I didn't even meet him before. I mean, okay, I guess, yeah, technically, since he was the man in the hallway, I met him like in a different way. But anyways, okay, so a melody for it came to me when I was just staring at the words one day, and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of pretty. So yeah, you guys gonna hear that. Some of you for the first time, for others, here you go. And I'm probably gonna take a break from doing mokunas for maybe the next 2 weeks because some kind of big things are happening for me in my personal life in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, if you guys don't hear from me or if you guys don't see another episode popping up, that's why. But don't worry, I'll be back. But okay, here's the Mele. Hope you guys like them. If not, that's okay too. Aloha.
Kuhela hela ke kula o ka mahoa Kukini vela I ka ili o ka malihini Ke ho'oku ene ia Maila e ka waikoloa I ke kaumi mali e ka pu'ulena Ke kaiwe no me ia Maila e ka inuwai Ha'u o pikawaha o ha'ena I ka makani Nini au e ha'i ka pua o ka make Hele ho'ohihi na a'u Ke aloha ke hiki mai Me he wai mapuna ala I ke alo na kuahiwi I au hune I ke alo na pali He wahi aloha no ku'ipo I ka leo ke kahuli Ooh.